have a whale behind me, and today I'm going to be doing an original tag that I've created called the Once Upon a Bookish Dinner Party tag.
Pitch black hair, his eyes are green. Head's messed up but heart so clean.
This is going to be a video in 3 parts. The first part is going to be fairly quick. I'm just going to go over the background of this tag. In part 2, I will tell you the questions for this tag. And in part 3, I will give you my answers to this tag. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get started with how this tag came about. So this tag was inspired by a conversation that I had with Shannon. She's always linked in the description down below. Please do check out her channel and subscribe. She's absolutely amazing. And during that conversation, I was talking about how I was reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and how I was really looking forward to reading more of their stories and really annoyed that I had to sleep for work. And Shannon basically made a comment about how I'd get to spend my weekend with Addie and Delilah. And as conversations go, it kind of evolved into us imagining like actually getting to spend a weekend with them. And it didn't take long for us to imagine a dinner party where all of your favourite characters were in attendance, and thus this tag was born. I did do a quick search before creating this tag, looking for similar tags, and there is a literary dinner party tag which has been created by Hannah's Books. However, I do feel like my tag has got a unique spin, as it asks you to imagine a single dinner party where all of the questions relate to this one dinner party. Kind of along the lines of those kind of tag your friends things that you used to get on MySpace and Facebook. I don't know if they're still around. I don't use either platform anymore. And that basically sums up how this tag came about. You're hosting a dinner party. Who are you inviting? Fictional characters, authors, living or dead, anyone else? Who will be the last to RSVP? And who will arrive early to help you set up? What does your menu look like, and what will everyone be drinking? How do you think all your guests will interact, considering all the different worlds they come from? What games will you play? Will anyone have an unusual party trick? And if you know, what would that be? Would you have any other kind of entertainment? What song will get everyone up dancing? Which book in common will everyone have read? Who will be the first one to get drunk? Which characters would be the first ones to get in a fight, and who would win? Which guests would end up hooking up or becoming best friends? Who would be the last person standing at the end of the night? Will there be another dinner party? And finally, tag 3 friends to complete this tag if you want. It's completely up to you if you want to just complete the tag by answering the questions, or you could create a bit of a story about how your dinner party goes. Before I start, I just want to say that this is obviously completely fictional. Most of the guests are fictional, and of those who aren't fictional, only a handful of them I know well enough to really know how they would respond in this made-up scenario. Is only intended as a bit of fun. Even the fact that I would have a place large enough to host all of these guests is a work of fiction. Now, grab yourself a hot drink and somewhere cozy to sit, and let's settle in to tell the story of my dinner party. Once upon a time, Effie, that's me, decided that they were going to host a dinner party with some of their favourite characters, people and authors. The first thing that they needed to do was to figure out a guest list so they could send out the invites. Top of the list were Delilah from Delilah Green Doesn't Care, Addie from The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and Lila from A Darker Shade of Magic. But that wouldn't be enough people, so they decided to add Hades from Lore Olympus, Tamlin from A Court of Thorns and Roses, and Cinta from All the Better Part of Me, as well as their husband B, Spoops of Spoopy Hall fame, Shannon from Head in the Books, Scott and Nell from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, V. Schwab and AJ West. The invites were all sent out and the RSVPs were in, well, except for Tamlin's, because he is a tool, but Effie knew that he would likely storm in late, drunk and be offended when the other guests just scoffed at him. The dinner party was all set to go ahead on the 3rd Saturday of April at 6 p.m. On the day of the party, Effie was starting to get nervous. Would everyone show up? Would all the guests even get along? The first guest to arrive, hours before the others, was Shannon, who was quick to reassure Effie that the dinner party was going to be a success, as well as remind them that they got this and were going to have a lot of fun. Half an hour before the rest of the guests were due to arrive, Hades arrived looking somewhat shy and obviously embarrassed to have turned up so early, but trying to hide it. He headed over to the drinks area and started preparing some cocktails, ready for the other guests turning up. At exactly 6 p.m, the doorbell rang and it was time for the rest of the guests to start arriving. V. Schwab was the first to arrive, with Addie, Cinta, Spoops, Scott, Nell, and AJ West closely behind. Lila and Delilah arrived 5 minutes later, arm in arm, laughing their heads off after they met one another on the train to Effie's home. Tamlin, as predicted, had not arrived, but the night was still young, so Effie suspected he might make a surprise appearance later. Effie grabbed a tray of drinks from the kitchen. Each flute contained champagne, elderflower pressé, a dash of lemon juice, and had a tasty sugar rim. The drinks all passed out to the guests. It was time to start to get to know one another whilst the food finished. As is usual for social occasions where the guests aren't too familiar with one another, it took a little time for everyone to start feeling comfortable. But after CPR by Cupcake started playing, If You Know, You Know, and everyone got up dancing, things started to feel a lot more relaxed. As the guests began to get to know one another, it was clear that Delilah and Lila weren't the only two guests to instantly bond, as Shannon and Cinta quickly started exchanging jokes and realising how much they had in common. By the time that the food was ready to be served, Hades had come out of his shell and was getting on really well with everyone, but in particular Addie, Lila, Spoops and Delilah. B had also realised that he had a lot in common with Scott and Nell. The only two guests who weren't really getting along were Lila and Addie, as their strong personalities clashed, but they were still able to enjoy themselves so long as they kept ignoring one another. Effie had created a 3-course meal, but tried to keep it fairly simple. For the starter, they served baked camembert with freshly baked bread, grapes, semi-dried tomatoes, red onion relish, and walnuts. It was something of a messy dish to start, but it was clear that it was a big hit with the guests. Continuing the rich, cheesy theme, brie and truffle linguine with a rocket side salad was served as a main course. The meal was finished off with sticky toffee pudding, served with homemade ice cream. As everyone was eating, talk strayed onto the topic of books. The guests were surprised when they realised that they had all read The Shadows Between Us. However, the more the table discussed it, the more it made sense, as it was clear that everyone loved the fact that the protagonist was a strong, female character who knew what she wanted and didn't care who she had to step on to get it. It was one of the only times during the evening that Lila and Addie were able to agree on something. They shared a small smile as they realised this common ground. Effie had originally planned to have a coffee course with homemade biscotti. However, it was clear that the guests were well sated with the 3 courses that had been served and ready for the night's entertainment to begin. After dinner, everyone grabbed another drink, this time picking their beverage of choice. Most of the guests went for something whiskey-based, with Spoops grabbing a Jack Daniels and Pepsi Max, whilst Delilah opted for a more traditional on the rocks, and Addie went for some more champagne. Just as everyone was about to settle down to play some Just Dance, a very clearly drunk Tamlin burst into Effie's home, temporarily disrupting the party. Only silence greeted Tamlin's arrival, which was clearly not the response that he was expecting, but he quietly sauntered over to a corner with his tail between his legs to join the party. There was no need for Tamlin to be offered a drink, as he arrived with his own bottle of home-brewed liquor. To cut through the awkwardness of Tamlin's arrival, Delilah suggested that instead of Just Dance, everyone could play some drinking games. Whilst a few of the guests were initially hesitant to play, everyone quickly got involved as they played a quick round of Ring of Fire, with poor B being the unlucky soul who ended up having to down the King's Cup, but he took it like a champ. With all of the guests thoroughly enjoying themselves and feeling pleasantly tipsy, it was suggested it could be fun to play Never Have I Ever. As is always the way with Never Have I Ever, it started off very tame, with guests saying things like, "Never have I ever flown on a plane," and "Never have I ever stolen something." But it quickly descended into things of a more personal nature. Things took a bit of a turn when Shannon said, "Never have I ever locked a woman inside my home without her consent," while staring straight at Tamlin, and he went from a pouting child to a raging beast in 3.2 seconds. Tamlin's fury was only subdued when Hades threatened to call Cerberus to put him in his place, and Lila and Addie, reaching a temporary stalemate along with Delilah, gave Tamlin a piece of their minds. Clearly feeling unwelcome at the party, Tamlin left without a backward glance. After Tamlin's departure, the party returned to laughing and joking and generally having an amazing time. At the end of the night, everyone could agree that they had had a really memorable and thoroughly enjoyable night where many laughs were had. Cinder and Hades were the only 2 guests who still felt relatively sober, and the latter only because he is a literal god. Everyone left vowing that there would be another dinner party, and soon, and yes, it would be just as chaotic. Before leaving for the evening, Shannon turned to Effie and asked, "And how the hell did you come up with the idea to invite Tamlin? Of all people, Tamlin? Really?" Effie chuckled and responded a little drunkenly, "Honestly, I can't even remember, but it was funny to have him put in his place by Lilo and co. Maybe no Tamlin next time, eh?" Smiling back at Effie, Shannon responded, "Definitely not. Cheers to a great night." And over to you. What would your bookish dinner party look like? I would particularly love to hear from Spoops, Shannon, Scott and Nell, and Kevy. So tag, you're it. If you fancy doing this tag, then consider this me tagging you. I can't wait to hear about all your bookish dinner parties, so please comment below if you do choose to do this tag so I can show your dinner party all of the love. And until next time, bye!
there's a place